From Chesapeake, Virginia, the Lighthouse 100.1 presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick. Now here is Greg Bickaveris.
Sports Scene presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Sports Scene Saturday on the radio on WPMH at 10 a.m. and tunein.com by typing WPMH in the search bar. Greg Bickaveris along with Colleen. Glad you're with us. Tell your friends about Sports Scene as we are in the fall now. Twitter at Greg Bick. See the rest of my Twitter handles on GJBTV.com. Thank you to our military. Guest lineup presented by GJBTV.com. Phone line presented by at Greg Bick on YouTube. That's GREGBIC, GJBTV.com. High school, college football, NFL, all in full gear. Major League Baseball, postseason time are right around the corner. Great interviews, excellent guests, business segments, highlights, commentary. What teased me off? Thank you for listening to Sports Scene. We love our regulars and tourists who listen online and on the radio.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with their special she crab soup or an assortment of appetizers such as fried oysters Rockefeller. Aberdeen Barn has the finest premium steaks, prime rib, and their signature dish, stuffed flounder and jumbo fried shrimp, bacon-wrapped asparagus, and a Greek salad. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach and like the Aberdeen Barn on Facebook. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
Our guests today are Jacob Allman from Fox Sports, Sonny Dirth from the Daily Press and Virginian Pilot, and George McLean. Stay tuned to Sports Scene. Just a reminder, folks, Sports Scene is taped right here at the studios of WPMH, and portions of this program are pre-recorded. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene on the radio and online. It's a pleasure now to talk to Jacob Allman, Senior Vice President, Production and Talent Development at Fox Sports. How are you, Jacob?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
Very good. Very good morning, and thank you for joining us so early in the morning. Thank goodness for caffeine.
I actually don't drink caffeine. It's somehow I get natural energy, so we'll go with it.
That's great. That's great. But tell the folks, first of all, about your career. You kind of started with Fox Sports. You went to USC. It all kind of came to fruition for you in 1994.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. From my childhood, as a young kid, when people say, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" and most people would say, "I want to be a fireman or an astronaut," or if it was a female, a ballerina. I always said I wanted to be a baseball announcer, and I would call the games in my house when I turned the TV sound off and record it into a tape recorder, and it was always kind of what I wanted to do. I went to USC and studied broadcast journalism with a sports studies minor. Worked in our athletic department, was sports director of the student radio station, and one thing led to another. I interned at a regional sports network named Prime Ticket, and worked there as a production assistant my junior year in college. And then somewhere between my junior and senior year, out of the blue, I got a call from Fox Sports asking if I liked the NFL and if I'd be interested in working there. And obviously the answer was yes. That was in June of 1994. Fox Sports' first broadcast was a preseason game in August of 1994. And I've been fortunate I haven't had to look for work since. We're in my 28th season at working at Fox, as well as our 28th football season as a company. I was lucky, but I put myself in a position to be lucky that somebody, when they said they'd be looking for college kids, somebody at USC thought of me and gave him my number, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's all about consistency, and you're about as consistent as a person I've ever known in my entire life. You get everything organized and everything done so well. And you talk about those times back then, Pat Summerall, the late Pat Summerall, John Madden. I know that was very special. Dick Stockton, even Kenny Albert, right there at the beginning. A lot of these guys have been staples of Fox, and I think that's one thing people have realized is that as the decades move on, some of the same announcers people have grown up with are still there. But not only that, but there's special people behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much credit should go to David Hill and Ed Gorin, who were our two executive producers when Fox Sports started, and they really did an amazing job of setting the foundation in place. David had come from Sky Sports in London, where he worked with Rupert Murdoch, and then Ed Gorin had come from CBS, and Ed brought a lot of the CBS folks with him. Starting with, as you kind of alluded to, our two main announced crews were Pat Summerall, John Madden, and Dick Stockton and Matt Millen, which gave us instant credibility. If you Google and go back to the original stories when Fox got the NFL and signed the contract in December of 1993, and all the articles were, what are they going to put Bart Simpson in the booth or Homer Simpson in the booth? So bringing those crews over gave us instant credibility. And also on the studio side, James Brown and Terry Bradshaw came over from CBS, and both proved to be wonderful hires. Obviously, Terry's still with us to this day, and also on the production side, Bob Stenner and Sandy Grossman were the producer and director team that worked with Pat and John, and had worked with them for years, and then our number two crew was Richie Zients and Artie Kempner as a producer and director. Richie and Artie still with us. Richie's the producer with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, and Artie works with our number two crew of Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson, along with Pete Macheska, who also came over from CBS, and our lead director now is Rich Russo, who came over from CBS. So, in essence, we took some of a great core of people from CBS that not only was crucial as we started a network from scratch, but also just gave us credibility as we had these wonderful people working that, and to your point, a great deal of them are still with us to this day.
Talking to Jacob Allman, absolutely, from Fox Sports. And I guess you mentioned, kind of jokingly about the Simpsons and stuff. And, of course, that show is still on as well, which is great. That a lot of people thought about Fox in general, let's say before Fox Sports, as Hollywood movies. And are they going to use all that great creative content and graphics for sports? And I think we saw a little bit of that, Jacob, did we not, with hockey, with the glowing puck? You guys were always innovators first about technology.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think the glowing puck was really ahead of its time. I think most people don't remember, but to your point, the second sport that Fox Sports had actually was hockey, and to this day, I think if you look it up, I think that the best ratings and the most watched games that hockey ever had were when they were with Fox Sports. And that technology for the glowing puck, which was a little bit ridiculed at the time, it predated HD TV, so I think it really was ahead of its time. But that technology led to the first down lines, which the yellow lines, which you couldn't imagine watching a NFL or college football game without. So that was the great thing about the leadership we had under David Hill. He really pushed for what he would call the UVD, which was the unique visual difference. And the most more prominent example even than that is the Fox Box, which is the built-in score graphic that you see on every broadcast now. And you couldn't imagine a game without the score being on the screen at the time. But when you originally did it, people hated it. NBC said they would never do it, and now it's obviously become the standard. And if there's any technical issues and that score bug goes down, people can't believe it. So it's really become ingrained in how we watch sports.
Yeah, there's also a fine line, too, Jacob, with putting up scores during the games, too. I know for a long time, NBC did not like to do scores at all during the actual play of games. CBS and Fox, ESPN always were innovators with scores. But how do you balance that with the actual scores of other games going on when your game is just getting started at the 1 o'clock window, the 4:05 window, or the 4:25 window?
Yeah, honestly, I think philosophically, we've kind of gone away from a ticker, especially in a standalone game, and people have access to that information on whatever device they have in front of it, be it a laptop, an iPad, their cell phone. So I think our focus, in particular on NFL games, is to not overwhelm people with information of other games, because the people that want that, the people that are playing fantasy, the people that are gambling, they have that information at their fingertips, and I think it's a little less essential now than it once was.
Right. Talking to Jacob Allman from Fox Sports, Greg Bicoveris, at Greg Bick on Twitter, at Greg Bick on YouTube. Jacob, go ahead and plug. I know you're active on LinkedIn and on Twitter and social media. Go ahead and plug anything you want to, including Fox Sports.
Yeah, well, obviously all the handles for Fox Sports are easy. They're all at Fox Sports. My Twitter is at JacobU, JACOBU, and then on Instagram and LinkedIn is my full name, at Jacob Ullman, JACOBULLMAN.
Yeah, you mentioned Ed Goren, what a great producer he was. He was also a great producer with CBS Sports, too, before he joined Fox. Like you said, I was actually a runner in one of his games, and what a great guy he was, innovator. You mentioned Pete Machesko, who's also produces the World Series and the All-Star Game. So just a great talent of crew that Fox Sports has had. I've had a chance to be a stage manager for them for several years, thanks to Jacob and the good people at Fox. And you talk about when you first started compared to now. Back then it was everybody would just turn the TV on, and that's how there was really no internet to matter back then in the early 90s. Now it's like we're feeding the beast, Jacob. I mean, people can consume it on the Fox Sports app. You know, they can watch it by the ticket. They can get a lot of different ways to consume the content compared to, let's say, 1994, the late 90s.
Yeah, it's funny. We, on any given Sunday, we can have up to 8 games going on. And we have what comes out, a map where it shows which game is going to a particular market, and then it breaks the games down by percentage. And all of our crews are a little bit obsessive. My game's going to this percentage of the country. It's going to this market. What I try to impart to people is, in 2021, you can watch any game you want. To your point, be it on. You go to a sports bar, or if you have Sunday ticket, you can get it in your house. So in all honesty, in this day and age, if you want to watch a game on a Sunday, you can watch that game. So it really has changed that dynamic, that the games are not as regional as they once were, where, oh, God, I'm not going to be able to watch that game, or that game is blacked out in my area. Now, if you want to watch a game, you can watch a game. If there's a particular a group of announcers you can want to see, you can see them. Our latest announced crew is Gus Johnson and Aqib Talib, which is kind of gotten a fair amount of attention. They're a unique group. Well, anybody that wants to watch them now can watch them. I didn't even mention the Red Zone, which is popping on from game to game to game to game and gets a little of everything. So it really has changed in that even though the games are regional, if you want to watch a game, there's ways to do it.
Absolutely. And, of course, Gus does the college football 12 o'clock big noon kickoff as well on Fox. So he's doing a little double dip. He did a great job recently working with Aqib, like Jacob mentioned. And we're going to take a short break. We'll come back with part 2 of our interview with Jacob Allman from Fox Sports, One Sports Scene, after these messages.
Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Bicoveris, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick, and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM.
And welcome back to part 2 of our interview on Sports Scene with Jacob Allman from Fox Sports. A lot going on now, Jacob, as we're here into October. Basically, you got the playoffs, the World Series with baseball. Then, of course, NFL is in full gear, college football. This is just a fun time of the year. It always has been at Fox.
Yeah, October is special. the baseball postseason is such a big part of what happens in our company. I think there's generations of people that when they think October, they hear Joe Buck's voice. It's an interesting time where not only, we have that going on, we have college football, we have NFL going on. It becomes a little bit of a balancing act where our two lead NFL game announcers, Joe Buck and Kevin Burkhardt, work on our baseball postseason coverage. Joe, obviously, on games, and Kevin Burkhardt, who is as versatile as a person as there is in the business, goes from calling our number 2 NFL game each week to being our lead studio host for our baseball postseason coverage, and it's a special time. And there was a famous advertising campaign we had years ago. It says you can't script October, and that's what's the beauty of the baseball postseason. You got to watch every game, every pitch, because you never know what's going to happen next. So exciting times. We have we alternate which league we show. So this year we'll be showing the American League, and then the DS and the ALCS leading into the World Series, which we have every year.
Absolutely, and that's always a fun time of the year too. And I guess it's a lot easier now, Jacob, with FS1 and FS2, because you did a lot of this without those two for so many years you were there at Fox.
Yeah, well, having FS1, which shows a lot of the baseball postseason, is huge, and also keep in mind that the baseball postseason has expanded, kind of going along with that. So, things change, and it benefits the viewers. There's that much more postseason baseball to watch.
Talking to Jacob Allman here, and Jacob, before we talk about the Thursday night package, a lot for folks who are watching the 1:00 game or the 4:05 game or the 4:25 game. The 4:25 window is still fairly new. It was usually just 1:00 or 4:00. But explain to the viewers, if you're watching a 4:05 game, a standalone game, you've done some of those recently here, even in 2021. It's not a doubleheader game. That's the only game shown on Fox in that particular market at that time, correct?
Yeah, correct. The way it basically works out is that we alternate with CBS weeks. We can show a doubleheader, which means we can show 2 games to a local market. On a single header, we can show 1 game. The first week of the season and the last week of the season, both CBS and Fox can show doubleheaders. So, yeah, if a game kicks off at 4:05, that means that's the only game showing in that market, and if a game kicks off at 4:25 Eastern, that means we have a doubleheader, so you get an early game and a late game, and that doubleheader window, which we call America's Game of the Week, that Joe, Troy, Aaron Andrews, and now Tom Rinaldi call for us, along with Mike Pereira, our rules analyst. That actually is the highest rated window in all of sports television and all of the NFL. Even outrates the primetime games that air during the week. So 4:25 is really, that really kind of sets the tone and has the most viewers of any NFL game during the week when we have a doubleheader, America's Game of the Week.
And I think that's great too, because we have a big country, and I think the 4:25 games on Sunday benefit the East Coast, and the Thursday night games that start at 8:20 on the East Coast benefit the West Coast too, because you're at least up at a decent hour. People that have kids like yourself, they can at least watch the games, without having to go to bed so early, whatever. But the 4:25 games are great. All right, this is a question I'm asked. I'm sure you've already been asked, even probably from some people in your own neighborhood. Like some of the senior citizens in my neighborhood said, what game or what channel is the Thursday night going to be on in 2022? I don't have Amazon on my TV. I'm like, okay, it's a streaming device, but there's a lot of people, Amazon's done some NFL games, but it's going to be a big switch, Jacob, because primarily Thursday night has been on all the commercial networks primarily and the NFL network. Explain to the viewing and the audience here what's going to happen in 2022 with Thursday night football.
Well, this is Fox's last year broadcasting Thursday night football, and
sure.
There are some Thursday night games. There's actually 7 games as part of our contract that we produce Fox produces for the NFL Network that just air exclusively on the NFL Network. Starting next year, Amazon is actually going to produce their own games. So this is actually our last year at Thursday night, and you watch those games on Amazon. If you have Amazon Prime, they will air there. The other thing is that if you live in a home market, so if it's the Giants versus the Washington football team, in the local markets, it will air on over-the-air television, which still happens to this day on the NFL Network standalone games. So it will be an adjustment, but as the world heads towards more of a digital streaming world, I think it was inevitable at some point that a package would land on a streaming service, and I think Thursday night was the most obvious candidate for it. So we wish our friends at Amazon nothing but the best luck with it. Two people that we work very closely with. Mike Mariano just went over there as their executive producer. He was at the NFL Network for many years. And then a producer named Alex Strand, who actually worked for Fox Sports. Those guys both work at Amazon. Will be a huge part of their coverage next year. So we wish them nothing but the best. And we actually already work with them because when the main Thursday night package starts, it's what's called a TriCast, where the games air on Fox, but they also air on NFL Network as well as Amazon. So they dipped their toes in a little bit already by simulcasting our game, and next year they'll have the show to themselves, and they'll produce it themselves and air it themselves.
Right. And, of course, Jacob is in charge of a lot of the signing, too, for the crews week to week. And I got to ask you, how much easier is it for Fox, being based in the West Coast, to have the Rams and the Chargers right there in Los Angeles for your traveling crews? Because, as you know, Jacob, over the years, and you traveled a lot when you were a BA as well, traveling is not always easy, especially during COVID. But to have two potential games on Fox in your own backyard must make it a little bit easier at times, although your guys and gals are traveling from all over the country to get anywhere, no matter whether they live in that market or not. But to have that, and of course, you have the 49ers and now Vegas. That's a lot of teams in the West Coast.
Yeah, it's nice when you can give somebody quote unquote a home game, and if a person like Kevin Burkhardt, who lives in Southern California, can go to have a game where he doesn't have to get on a plane. That's a great thing. So, not just with LA, you kind of factor that into the equation when we assign our games. If we have a game in Denver, Mark Schlereth lives there. Can you take care of him?
Mm-hmm.
Greg Olson, retired and joined us this year. If there's a game in Charlotte, can we get him there? So that factors in the equation when you can make it work. If you can take care of somebody and make their life a little easier for a week, it's definitely worth doing.
Right. Final few moments here with Jacob Allman from Fox Sports. You talk about the studio, too, and that's really good, too, because the last several years, you guys have added 11 o'clock show and a 12 o'clock show as far as East Coast time. And, of course, that's early for you guys out on the West Coast, but that's really kind of a great precursor to the big show at noon before the 1 o'clock games kick off.
Yeah, I think what we found is that we'd have these really great matchups, but if you aired them at in prime time, 8 p.m. Eastern on a Saturday night, they got a little bit lost in the mix where there was there's a great ABC game, ESPN would have a game, and you'd have these great matchups, and they just didn't rate all that well. Where Mike Mulvihill, who we call the smartest person at Fox Sports, who's really kind of our research and programming guru, he had the idea, well, why not take that noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific window and really own it? Usually what would air there would be kind of an early Big Ten game, which is not necessarily their best game of the day. And you put your best game there, and you really can win that time slot and not really compete against anybody else. And it's worked really well. And it coincided with our pregame show, Big Noon Kickoff, which is just done great for us and really developed into a huge franchise for us and become appointment viewing for college football viewers across the country.
Yeah, and same thing with the NFL. You have an 11 o'clock kickoff on Sundays with, people doing the show with Carissa. And then at 12 o'clock, Kurt Menefee leads that storied crew as well.
Yeah, well, it's funny, when Fox Sports started 28 seasons ago, there was no such thing as an hour pregame show. Yeah. And people were like, what are they going to talk about for so long? And now to the point where to your point, we've added Fox NFL Kickoff, which airs at 11 a.m. Eastern Time before Fox NFL Sunday. So we went from how can they do an hour to we're doing 2 hours, which is less than ESPN's doing and less than the NFL Network's doing, and it really the landscape of things have changed where people just are thirsty for as much information as they can get. And the good news for all of us that work in the NFL is it's really America's passion, and I think the reality is I don't know that we've reached a point where too much is too much, and we've oversaturated. People love their NFL.
Absolutely. Last thing, you're right there in Los Angeles, right there where all the movies are made, big time commercials, so forth. But your division, of course, is doing live programming. A lot of these shows that people watch during prime time on the network, sometimes they're taped or live, but there's nothing like doing live TV, correct, Jake? Explain that whole dynamic of some of the people that watch the prime time shows during the week that sometimes can be taped compared to live work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as the world has changed, and there's more entertainment options, and people have entertainment at their fingertips with their phones, and I think we saw it even more with the pandemic, where people were consuming their media on Netflix and other streaming services. The one thing you can't replicate is a live sporting event where you have to watch it in the moment. It loses its sense of urgency if you do not watch it live, and you want to be a part of a conversation with your friends the next day or in the moment on Twitter or whatever social media you follow. So I think the one thing that we've seen is that sports is really almost that biggest differentiator now, and we've seen it also in election cycles with the news being carrying such weight, and that live programming is really become so important in network television. It used to be that for us to get any time on Fox was a big deal because it interrupted the entertainment schedules. Well, now we have Thursday Night Football on Fox, which leads to Friday Night SmackDown on Fox, which leads to our Saturday college football, which leads to our Sunday NFL. So really 4 days out of the 7 of the week, sports is programming the network of Fox, which is a big change from earlier years, and just shows how important live television and live sports have become to the television ecosystem.
Right, and every game the World Series will be on Fox. Jacob, thank you for your time, talent, and treasure, and sharing some great moments with us. And we'll have to get you on again in early 2022 and talk about this some more. And just a great time talking about TV and how it's changed, not only at Fox, but all over the country as well.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and obviously I also appreciate the friendship. You've been a good man over the years to me. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure as well. And, Fox, been with them, part-time, like I said, since 2009. Even worked one game, Jacob, way back in 94. That was a fun season for everybody. It was a memorable year for everybody way back for Fox. All the best. A great talent himself. Senior Vice President, Production and Talent for Fox Sports, Jacob Allman. Jacob, have a good rest of the week.
You as well, my friend.
Take care. Sports Scene will continue after these messages.
You are listening to Sports Scene with Greg Bicoveris. Now, back to Greg. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
All right, highlights, gjbtv.com, hrsmhof.com, HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Don't forget also sports highlights on nnpstv.com. We have Pro Football Hall of Famer Alan Faneca, who coaches Cox High School in Virginia Beach, on the October edition of Sports Highlights, nnpstv.com, the Newport News School System channel. gjbtv.com for archive shows. Click the YouTube link on the homepage for audio and video. Question of the day to our esteemed producer and general manager, Colleen. This is always difficult, Colleen. People never fuss about breakfast or lunch, but is dinner during the week, Monday through Friday especially, an ongoing issue since both parents work full time?
I have to admit, a lot of the times we're grab and go, or because me and my husband are on two different schedules, it's like some days I'll make something, but he's already eaten. So it's very difficult sometimes to get that all worked out.
Very good. Yeah, dinner is always an issue. I don't care what day of the week it is. Even the weekends, it can be an issue as well. All right, Sports Scene will continue after these messages.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with their special she crab soup or an assortment of appetizers such as fried oysters Rockefeller. Aberdeen Barn has the finest premium steaks, prime rib, and their signature dish, stuffed flounder and jumbo fried shrimp, bacon-wrapped asparagus, and a Greek salad. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach and like the Aberdeen Barn on Facebook. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
Just a reminder, folks, Sports Scene is taped right here at the studios of WPMH, and portions of this program are pre-recorded. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene on the radio and online. And welcome back to Sports Scene. We now switch gears to talk about sports with Sonny Durth from the Virginian Pilot of the Daily Press, who's been there since 1988. A James Madison graduate, played on the tennis team there as well. Sonny, how are you, my friend?
Excellent. Nice to hear from you.
You as well. Sonny's been a guest of mine for decades on radio and TV over the years. Sonny, let's talk about, first of all, how you guys maintain. You'll have a really good staff there. It's a small staff, but you guys are getting it done. You know, you're getting it done on the high school, college, and professional level.
Yeah, we're trying awfully hard, that's for sure. Just the industry in general has been hard hit in print. It's gone more toward the digital side, but we produce the print newspaper every day. Jamie Frankenberry is in charge of our section. He's really experienced and does an excellent job. He's been here since he was an Old Dominion student, and he knows the area very well. I work on the desk with a man named Joe Kasich, who's a guy who grew up in Morgantown and went to West Virginia, and he's been around this area for probably around 20 years. He knows the area very well. And we have a really excellent staff. You know, just about everybody is devoted to high schools in some form. Marty O'Brien, who I worked with at the Daily Press before the consolidation, and then I've met some wonderful people who were originally at the Pilot. That goes from Larry Rubama to Ray Nimmo to Sean Wilkerson to David Hall. And I probably forgot somebody, but it's definitely fun to work there.
Sonny, let me ask you this. You've always been in charge of page 2 and the layout of the Daily Press. How about now that you guys are working with the Pilot, who does the layout for them?
Well, actually, Joe Kasich and I work with people who are in Chicago who do multiple papers in the Chicago Tribune chain. These people we work with, who I've never met them in person, but I really like them. They work with papers such as the Allentown Morning Call, the Hartford Courant, the Baltimore Sun, et cetera. And then we coordinate what's going to go in, and they kind of lay it out.
Mm-hmm. It's still early in the season, but let's talk about college football first. Virginia's off to a pretty good start, as is Tech. Tech lost to West Virginia. Virginia lost to North Carolina. Old Dominion's off to a little bit of a shaky start, but they haven't played in 2 years prior to 2021. What are your thoughts so far in the early landscape of college football?
I certainly think the Coastal Division is wide open in the ACC. Tech and Virginia are both candidates to win it, as is North Carolina. If North Carolina, doesn't want to end up in a tie with Virginia Tech, they lose the tiebreaker. In the Atlantic Division, rather, I think Clemson is probably still the best team, but is much more vulnerable without Trevor Lawrence and ATN, Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very curious there. I'm looking for Old Dominion to be much more competitive in Conference USA, though missing last season in terms of competitiveness really didn't help them at all.
Not at all. And, of course, it's still early on, but you never know what's going to happen. But for the ACC, what are the odds of Florida State having a really bad year and Clemson not as good as they were a year ago, like Sonny mentioned? So this is really up for grabs in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to get a team in the playoff, you're not going to make the playoff with 2 losses. So I think the pressure is on Clemson to run the table after losing to Georgia in order to make it. And if some other team wins the ACC, there's no guarantee that team would make the playoff at all.
Very good, very good. Talking to Sonny Durth, of course, Alabama, they've won some close games too. Ohio State's already lost, so there's some, and Notre Dame is winning, but it's close, and Michigan as well. Let's switch gears to the NFL. How about former Old Dominion quarterback Taylor Heineke? It's still, the chapter still remains to be open on what the Washington football team will do in 2021, but he definitely was Johnny on the spot ready when Fitzpatrick got hurt early in the season.
Yeah, he clearly has developed. He thrilled us all with his exploits for ODU, and he's developed the last few years as a pro quarterback. And I think clearly he's a guy who is starter caliber if necessary. And if that doesn't work, I think he can be a backup for several years.
And, of course, you and I both went to CAA schools back then, George Mason and James Madison. But people should stop knocking the FCS guys because look at Joe Flacco. He had a great career, won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. So it doesn't matter what school you go to. Rich Gannon as well.
No, FCS, especially in the Colonial Athletic Association, is a pretty high level of caliber of football. I suspect that CAA will get multiple playoff teams this year. And just as a JMU alum, I certainly hope they can contend for another national title, which they've done the past several years. Delaware's very good, Richmond's very good, and Villanova is as well.
Yeah, Villanova's always had great games. They've had to play Penn State as well, so that's not going to be easy. And Penn State's doing very well in 2021. Sonny, what are your other thoughts so far on the NFL? I mean, some teams have struggled early on, but we interviewed Alan Faneca for his sports highlights for October. He's not a big fan of the 17 games because it's a lot of wear and tear on the body, but I guess time will tell how that will evolve as well. That's a lot of football games in 1 year.
Yeah, it sure is. It makes depth really essential, especially in that you've got to have 2 quarterbacks that you can compete with, and also it's just going to be a matter of try to hang in there. If you're up by 20 points in the fourth quarter, get your regulars out of there, because A, you can get your backup some experience, and B, you prevent your top line guys from getting injured.
Absolutely. And plus, just because you're on the practice squad doesn't mean you're not going to play. Odds are you're probably going to play. Let's leave it on baseball, Sonny. Your Braves are right there on the cusp as well. Every year they're, to evolve deep into the postseason. I'm a big Yankees fan. They always, make me lose whatever hair I've got left in the wild card race. But this should be a very interesting wild card finish.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I still think the Dodgers, who won the World Series last year, are probably the best team. But the Giants have given them an incredible run. They've been the surprise team of baseball to me. Really impressed by them. There are a lot of excellent teams in the American League. I have no idea who's going to come out of there and go to the World Series. Certainly the Yankees are among them. So are the Red Sox, Blue Jays, Astros, etc. The White Sox with Tony La Russa, who feels like he's about 90 years old. But it will be a very interesting postseason, I think.
Yeah, Tony La Russa had Ron Kittle on his team back in the early 80s and Greg Luzinski. I mean, that's a generation ago. So
don't laugh. I actually remember him when I was a kid. I used to watch the Richmond Braves a lot, and he was their starting catcher in 1974. I still remember that.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, that was a long, long time ago. So, Sonny, thank you very much. All the best to you and Virginia Media, the Daily Press, and the Virginian Pilot.
Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate all the help.
My pleasure. Sonny Dirth right there talking about sports on the print side. Sports Scene will continue after these messages.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with their special she crab soup or an assortment of appetizers such as fried oysters Rockefeller. Aberdeen Barn has the finest premium steaks, prime rib, and their signature dish, stuffed flounder and jumbo fried shrimp, bacon-wrapped asparagus, and a Greek salad. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach and like the Aberdeen Barn on Facebook. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
Sports Scene, Hampton Roads premier interview show with Greg Bicaveras, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregBic and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM. What tees you off? Presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com.
All right, what teased me off, Colleen, when you write something down or forget to write something down the night before and you want to make a call the next day and you just totally blank out.
And don't know the answer or the message or anything
who
like
you're
that.
supposed to call or
right,
whatever.
you totally forget. I know I had to do something, but I can't remember
It
what.
might be a friend or a business that you need to call, but you just totally blank out. I don't care what day of the week it is, like we talked about for dinner. Cold leftovers, 1 day old even. I am just not a fan of leftovers, let alone cold leftovers.
No, I mean, some leftovers are good, or, you know, some meals are good a day after, but not too much longer than that.
I mentioned this on LinkedIn and Facebook both. From the Wadensburg area all the way to the ocean front, there is not one rest stop. Yet you see people on the side of the road going to the restroom. You got kids. It's dangerous. Cars are speeding on the interstate. And I can't believe, as big as this area is, even the Outer Banks has a rest stop as well. They're very, very small. We desperately need a rest stop.
Some other areas, that's true. I found in the last year with COVID and everything, you know, with restaurants being closed down, it was harder and harder to find places to stop that were open.
Yeah, because you just can't walk in and say, I'm going to go to the restroom and just walk right on out.
Right.
You know, it can be very awkward. I've seen people get kicked out before. All right, this is really an ongoing issue because leaves are about to start coming down here in the late fall. But neighbors' tree limbs, when they hang into your yard, you got to cut your tree down already. Then you see their limbs as well. That can be an awkward conversation to have.
Right, because it's like, well, it's their tree, but it's over your property. So what do you do with that?
Technically, you can cut it down, but the right thing to do is to ask. But then that's the difficult thing as well.
True.
All right, speaking of that, having to rehash anything.
Rehash.
Just
go over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's difficult because you don't want to relive things, especially if it's been a bad experience.
How about this? Non-transparency. People who are just not transparent. Obviously, when their word means nothing, but transparency is so important in daily life.
You need to be real with people and tell the truth.
All right, this is really a strange one. Within the month of September, Marketron, folks, is what radio measures a lot of things on the cloud as far as getting people's times, what time their commercials are coming on. Who in their right mind would hack Marketron? But yet Marketron was hacked, Colleen, and that is just unbelievable. Of all the things to hack, you're hacking Marketron because I guess it involves so many media outlets.
I was going to say, they want to shut down or find out about people's information or something like that, you know, on how many commercial spots they're running or who knows what, you know, information. But that's a little scary.
Yeah, it really is. That hits close to all the radio stations in the country because they rely on it. All right, Sports Scene will continue. Just a reminder, folks, Sports Scene is taped right here at the studios of WPMH, and portions of this program are pre-recorded. Thank you for listening to Sports Scene on the radio and online. And welcome back to Sports Scene. It's always a pleasure to talk to George McLean from the Marksman and Newport News. George, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Greg. How about yourself?
Very good, as we're here into October now in the fall, and it's about time with this nicer weather for sure. George, let's start off with what happened recently in Newport News, the school shooting. We're learning more facts about it, but you and I talk about this on the show every single month about be careful, be alert. But this is something that everybody was vulnerable on a Monday. They usually have one resource officer from Newport News, or at any school for that matter. Usually they're resource officers no matter what school. But this caught everybody by surprise, and a 15-year-old minor was capable of pulling this off.
Yeah, that's the big surprise, I think, to everybody. What can we learn from it, and can it be anticipated? And right now, we don't know what the cause is or what, and so we'll wait for the investigations to come out and determine that. But one of the things that I heard on the news, matter of fact, this morning, and it was very true that when you have kids involved in this, they're not going out on the street and breaking into places or stealing these firearms. They're getting them from their parents, and that just gets to me, because as responsible adults, we need to make sure that our children are educated on the use and the safety, and if there's any perceived idea that a parent may have of their child not understanding any of this or having some behavioral issues, that these guns and they probably need to be locked up to where only the adults have access to these. So there's safes available, inexpensive, so you don't have to have one. It's room size to protect yourself. You protect your firearms. You can get some that hold 1, 2, or 3 handguns, and they're got combination locks, and kids are not going to be able to get into them. So I think it's all, when we look at this situation, it's a home deal. This is not typically not a gang thing out on the street, but we don't know any of this right now. But the adults have to take the lead and make sure that we keep firearms out of the hands of the kids.
Yeah, and this has opened up a Pandora's box. It's now hit close to home in Newport News. It affects everybody. The state police were there. I mean, it was just a big mess on Monday in late September. And, of course, that opens up the entrances of a school. The most precious commodity is kids. They're vulnerable. They just started school just a few weeks ago to start the school year, coming off a pandemic, coming off summer vacation. Monday morning, people are vulnerable. Teachers are just trying to teach these kids and get through the day. This is the last thing that happened. But now, George, every entrance into a building, whether it's a post office, a mall, a school, or whatever building, a restaurant, people can be vulnerable. Break-ins happen anywhere at all times, even during the daytime. But like you said, most kids that age are not breaking into most businesses. They're getting their guns from a guardian or a parent.
Yep. Yeah, that's a sad part, and not to make fun of any of this, but there's been kind of an old cliche around for quite a while, which I guess is what makes it a cliche, is that life is the number one cause of death, and without life you will never have death. Meaning, I've always taken it that there's no guarantees on anything. You get out of bed in the morning, you don't know what's in store for you for the rest of the day, and there's no way that you can guarantee 100% everyone's safety every second. So that's why it's incumbent upon us individually to do everything we can to make it our environment safe for us. But when you go back and you have kids involved, we're responsible for those kids. So as adults, as the school adults, the teachers and the administration, it's up to them. We as parents, of course, allow them to take our children, and we expect them to guarantee. So you're exactly right. You start looking at something like this happening, it's not really expected, although it has happened in the past in other schools. So where's the limit, if there is one, of ensuring safety? Where do we go? Is it just what money can provide? Is it more education? Is it what's the answer to that? And I certainly don't have it. I don't think there's every school district out there can afford to have armed guards at every entrance. When you lock the doors, you've got possibly problems in case of another emergency, a fire or whatever, where evacuation would need to be necessitated. Even though there are slap handles and whatever that should be able to operate the door in a one-way exit condition. That doesn't seem to be enough. So now you got metal detectors, and they're not cheap, and so it just becomes an endless project to try to ensure everyone's safety. And I don't know that that's possible.
Talking to George McLean from the Marksman, one of our good friends at CP Shuckers. Everybody's got to eat. Locals tradition, Shore Drive, Pacific Avenue, delicious food, great appetizers, steak bites, all the great specials, all the games on TV, sandwiches, burgers. Go by and see Matt, Mark, Chef Leon, the entire crew at CP Shuckers, 2 great locations in the wonderful city of Virginia Beach. And what's going on now at the Marksman, George? Every time we talk, it seems like it's getting a little bit better as far as getting in, getting out, the hours and the accessibility of the accessories there, also the shooting range and the guns. Things are getting better. I know they're not quite 100%, but at least things are starting to get a little bit better.
Starting to pick up somewhat. Ammunition, whether it comes from us or comes from others, it's starting to become slightly more available. It's still tough. Some of the bigger stores, big name stores, they've got some deeper pockets and a little bit more influence, so where some of them have been able to get some ammo, which is great because customers can, once they buy their ammo, they come to the range and are able to shoot. And our supply has increased subtly. It's not back to normal by any means, but so we're still doing the best we can with what we have to work with, and so every time it is made available to us, we're getting all that we're allowed to get to what's available out there for us. So that's the big thing is the ammo. The firearm sales starting to pick up again somewhat. That's becoming, I think, manufacturing is getting caught up where probably 6 months or a year ago, they were in a very severe dip as far as production goes, and I think that is starting to ramp back up again. So all of that helps out. You're able now to come into the range without a reservation. Although reservations are nice, but it's not required anymore. And we still ask it. Everyone just be cognizant of what's going on out there with the pandemic, and be as safe as you can be for yourself and for other folks.
Very good. Talking to George McLean. George, give us an update on Military Mondays and First Responder Fridays.
Yep, still there. We like everyone to take advantage of it as you can. Get you a further discount from your already reduced your rate, and just come in. It gives you an opportunity to stay current with your firearms. If you don't have ammo and you don't anticipate shooting, stop in and at least say hi and stay up on top of what's going on in the industry and the store, and just stay on top of how things are going.
Very nice. The Marksman right there in the Denby section of Newport News. Give them a call at 872-4130. That's 872-4130. Give us an update on the hours, the staffing, and got to ask a question we ask every several months or so. How's great former employee and family member BJ doing?
Well, they're doing great. I don't know if I had mentioned it in the past, but April 9th, which is actually BJ's birthday, they welcomed child number 4.
Great.
So that would be from son, or not grandson, but he was a grandson, but grandchild number 6. So they're all busy and raising number 4, and he's doing great. Big boy. And so you back into the store hours. We're still in the from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and that goes from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Will remain open till 7, and Saturday back to 6. Sunday's still closed for right now, unless we're having permit classes. So we still have to deal with a lot of the pandemic stuff and the governor's direction. Hopefully, it doesn't retighten like it was before with this new variant stuff. So, fingers crossed, and just kind of hold it, if you would.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I mean, and that's the case, George. We're going to have another new governor here in January, but it could be the repeat governor. We don't know yet because the election is not here. But what would that mean if we have the same governor we did from several years ago?
Well, he's not my favorite, August.
Yeah,
not my choice. So it just really remains to be seen. We have experienced probably since I've been involved, with the store, which has been since 2008, 2009. We've had more Democratic governors than we have Republican, and it's always, when we've had a Republican governor, it's always been kind of a breathe a sigh of relief, and we just have to again hold our breath because we just really don't know. And in today's world and situation in Washington, it's kind of like, man, these are, I don't know, they want to grab all the power they can and put all the restrictions that they can. And think that they've got the answer. This is going to fix everything. And there's a lot smarter people out there than they are, and they know that you're not going to take all the guns off the street. All you're doing is preventing the innocent, law-abiding folks from defending themselves. And that's not the way we want to see things go, I don't think.
Very good. George, thank you for your time, your talent, your treasure. Have a good rest of this month, and we will talk to you very soon as we wrap up the fourth quarter of 2021.
All right, Greg. You take care. Be safe out there.
You too. George McLean right there from the Marksman. Stay tuned for more Sports Scene after these messages.
A tradition of excellence for over 50 years is the Aberdeen Barn in Virginia Beach. Start your experience off with their special she crab soup or an assortment of appetizers such as fried oysters Rockefeller. Aberdeen Barn has the finest premium steaks, prime rib, and their signature dish, stuffed flounder and jumbo fried shrimp, bacon-wrapped asparagus, and a Greek salad. Open daily. Visit them at 5805 Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach and like the Aberdeen Barn on Facebook. Call 464-1580 and log on to aberdeenbarn.net.
Sports Scene, Hampton Road's premier interview show with Greg Picaveras, each Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11.
And you look at that, 4-4 at home, which is just average, 4-3-1 on the road. I mean, you're not going to win any games like that. They were not the same team after they beat the Packers, yet the Packers were a totally different team.
Interact with Sports Scene on Twitter @GregPick and listen weekly as Greg interviews distinguished guests with excellent commentary and insight. Sports Scene, Saturdays at 10 a.m. on the Lighthouse 100.1 FM.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-520-8629. 800-520-8629. 800-520-8629. Call right now. 800-520-8629.
Want to thank our guests today on Sports Scene on WPMH, Jacob Allman from Fox Sports, Sonny Dirth, as well as George McLean, our great producer, general manager, Colleen, at Greg Bick on Twitter, at Greg Bick on YouTube. That's GregBic. Google WPMH Radio for more information on this wonderful cluster as well. So for Colleen, I'm Greg Bicaveras. Thanks for listening to Sports Scene on the radio and online. We'll talk to you soon.